Iraq, Syria and the US may be leading the fight against the Islamic State, but media reports suggest that Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt and Turkey may have all launched secret attacks against the militant group and its affiliates in the region. Well, let's discuss this with Eric Margolis, a war correspondent who joins us on the line now. Eric, good to see you. What could such an uncoordinated, as it seems, action in this already highly volatile region lead to, do you think?
More uncoordination and more confusion. What a mess this is turning into. First of all, this is the first time, to my idea, that various Arab states like the UAE and Egypt have not even consulted with Washington, we're told, but have gone on their own to try and attack the Islamic groups because they feel that the U.S. is not being forceful enough in attacking the Islamists. But it's hard to know which Islamists, and there are all kinds with different affiliations and different viewpoints.
OK, in your opinion then, would it be better to see all of these sides that we've mentioned fighting the Islamic State actually come together, unite their forces, perhaps deliver a powerful, synchronised blow?
Well, it's hard to synchronize anything in the Middle East. They can't even decide what time the moon comes up to begin Ramadan. They're still arguing about it. So it's going to be very difficult. And they have different interests. You know, Egypt is emerging as an extremely right-wing power on its own that wants to crush Islamists everywhere. The UAE is less militant on that. Qatar is on the other side. Washington is trying to figure out how to get a grasp again on the situation, which frankly right now it's having trouble understanding.
It seems like Washington is in a pretty tricky political situation right now, having to admit that it's actually fighting people it once supported. How do you see America trying to deal with this? Well,
what a bad joke this whole thing is. The U.S. stumbled into this. It got talked into trying to overthrow the Syrian government because as a way of getting back at Iran. And the Israelis were very influential in doing this, hoping that the U.S. would crush the Syrians. But now the U.S. is actually, we've been saying for a long time that the natural ally of the U.S. is the Syrian government against these jihadist forces. So now the U.S. is supporting anti-Syrian government jihadists in Syria, and yet 2 kilometers across the border, they're supporting anti-government jihadists in Iraq. It's a very confusing situation. Nobody can then figure out who are these so-called moderate Islamic forces. Probably the only way is to get them to wear green hats and have the other ones wear blue hats or something so you can distinguish them.
Certainly America's taken a lot of blame from different quarters over letting the Islamists in Syria take advantage of US money and weapons. Could we say that Washington's perhaps now fixing its own mistakes?
It's trying to, but the U.S. has painted itself in a corner. You know, in international affairs, you should never call people names because you never know when you're going to end up working with them. And this is a perfect example. The U.S. has been branding the Syrian government to terrorists, just the way they brand the Taliban terrorists. And now if the U.S. makes any approach to the Syrians, the Republicans in Washington will have a field day saying, oh, you're cooperating with terrorists. So it was a big mistake. And this whole thing has been a fiasco from day one. The U.S. should never have gotten involved in the Syrian situation. Let's see how much deeper it gets sucked in before it decides it's time to start backing out.
OK, thanks so much for joining us, giving us your thoughts on the situation. We're speaking to Eric Margolis, war correspondent.